So it looks like we're getting a new DC Multiverse Batman Arkham City Collect and Connect wave, but are any of these action figures any good, and are they worth your money, soulmates? Be sure you stick around until the end, guys, because we're going to talk about what Batman Arkham City characters we want to see next. If you support what I do, please click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video of mine when it comes out. So the first action figure in this Collect and Connect wave is of course Batman, and this one for the most part is a re-release of the Arkham Asylum Batman that was released early on in the DC Multiverse line. The difference between that early one and this one is that it has a few changes. First, this one has a new head sculpt, and very curiously, the eyes are blank on this one. But Batman in the video game has his eyes exposed. Now, is this necessarily wrong? Not exactly, because in the Batman Arkham games, if you guys recall, every time he goes into detective mode, he does have those white eyes. So you could say he's in detective mode on this action figure, and I wouldn't bat an eye. Another difference on this re-release is that the emblem on his chest is much larger than the one that was originally released on the Batman Arkham Asylum toy. And I think that this is a welcome change because with this new bat emblem on his chest, I feel it's much more aesthetically pleasing. Another thing that's different about this Batman is that the gauntlets have been changed. But aside from all that, this is largely the same action figure, down to the utility belt, which is mostly the same as it is in Arkham Asylum, but in Arkham City there is some slight differences on the pouches, and that is not reflected here on this re-release, unfortunately, so we're still seeing the Arkham Asylum belt. Is it a huge difference? Well, not enough to notice unless you're really paying attention. Also, considering that this is a re-release of the Batman Arkham Asylum body, we're still seeing the same flaws that we saw on that action figure, such as single jointed elbows, which is always kind of a kicker on Batman toys, because usually when you have a Batman toy you like to see that double jointed elbow. We see it on a lot of Batman toys, and this is one of the only ones I can think of that does not have that double jointed elbow. The next toy we're going to see in this Arkham City release is Catwoman, and this is such a good release. This is one that I am really excited for because it looks like a picture perfect translation of Catwoman from the video game. I legitimately cannot spot any flaws on her to speak of. It looks like she has her whip, she's got her goggles, and her headpiece looks really good with a little bit of hair kind of pouring out the front of it, and she's got that little zipper kind of down just a little bit, so she's showing a little bit of something, and then all the rest of her details, all the rest of her textures look very good, and even the pose of her hands looks appropriate. So what can you really say about Catwoman other than I'm really excited about this one? Finally, we're getting a Catwoman action figure that I like, because I haven't really seen one. They did one for the Batman movie toys, but I really wasn't into them all that much, and the only one that I kind of was into was maybe the unmasked version of Catwoman. This one though, considering her design in Arkham City, could function pretty well as a standard modern comic book version of Catwoman. After all, this version of Catwoman doesn't look all that much different from how she looked in the Hush storyline. Next up in this wave is the mightiest character in the DC and Marvel multiverse, the Penguin. How is he? Well, his body looks tremendous actually, and the most exciting thing about him I think is that he finally comes with an umbrella, which you'd think wouldn't be asking all that much, but when you look at the retro Penguin and then you look at the Batman version of the Penguin, he didn't use an umbrella in the movie, so it makes sense that he didn't come with one. But the Burgess Meredith version of the Penguin, he used umbrellas, so why wouldn't he come with one? Looking at the Penguin, I wonder how much articulation he's really going to have, because he's kind of a small character, and he is covered all over his torso by his sweater and his jacket, so it's kind of up in the air how much movement we're going to be able to see on his torso. I'm not sure we're going to see all that much. It might be pretty stationary. On his legs, it looks like he's got the single-jointed knee joint with a knee swivel, so that's fine. They've been doing that a lot on the action figures that have suit pants recently, and it's worked pretty well on some of them. Some it's looked a little weird, but this one it looks pretty decent, so I kind of like the way the body on this one looks, but his head is a little rough looking, I thought. I thought that the head sculpt on this was the biggest miss on the entire action figure, because it looks strange from this angle, and maybe it looks different from other angles, but I looked at a few pictures to see what it did look like from other angles, and just all around it didn't feel like the head was really complete yet. The fourth action figure we're going to look at in this wave is Ghoul, and this is another one that has just been knocked out of the park. This looks like another perfect representation of one of the characters from the video games. And they could have chosen any number of characters to put in this slot. They could have done Joker, they could have done Hugo Strange, but who did they decide on? Ghoul, and I approve wholeheartedly, because Ghoul is one of Batman's most important villains, and it's so good to finally have him in the DC Multiverse line, even if it's the Arkham City version of him. I hope that we do get some more versions of Ghoul in the very near future, because they do have some very cool variations on the character out there, but this one is definitely a good one to have. So looking at him, what kind of articulation are we looking at? Well, we've got the double jointed knees on the baggy pants, and that really works for me. I love it when they do that sort of thing. We also have the double jointed elbows. Oddly enough, he has two open hands, and I imagine that they're both open so that he can grab that sword with both hands. And by the way, it's really nice that he has a character-specific accessory like that sword included with him. I think that it makes this action figure even better than it already was. And his torso is probably going to be somewhat held back by the fact that it's got that plastic clothing on top of his upper body, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we've seen some pretty good movement from DC Multiverse action figures despite having the clothing on. And by the way, I absolutely love the wild hair head sculpt that they have on him. He looks like the madman that he's supposed to be, and it just adds that extra element to Ghoul after a dip in the Lazarus pit that you think, wow, Batman's got to go up against this guy now? Good luck. The last action figure in this Collect and Connect wave is, of course, Solomon Grundy. And boy, this is one that I know a lot of people have really been waiting for. Something I noticed about this Solomon Grundy Build-A-Figure is that he doesn't look quite as monstrous as we see in the Arkham City video game. The design definitely takes a lot of cues from the video game, and for the most part he does look a lot like what we see there. But he looks a little bit toned down by comparison, like he isn't falling apart at the seams like he is in the video games here. He looks pretty clean, like you see him at the beginning of the boss fight. So I think the idea here is that Solomon Grundy can be used as a general DC Multiverse villain and not just part of the Arkham City series. One thing I was curious about looking at Solomon Grundy was whether or not the middle of his torso was going to be removable. Now, I don't think it will be, but considering all the stitching that we see all around his torso there, it does make you wonder. I know it's a little bit pie in the sky to hope for it. It's one of those cases where I'm shooting for the stars and hitting the moon, but I really hope that we can take that little chest piece off so we can see his heart and his ribcage beating like we saw in the video game. That would be really awesome. Is this wave worth your money, guys? Well, at $25 a piece, $100 for the whole wave, it looks like we're getting a lot of bang for our buck here. Consider that the average price of a Marvel Legends now, the standard price is $25, and now the Collect and Connect wave from DC Multiverse is $25 too, and it has been since its inception. So I think that this is worth checking out. All of these toys look like really good quality pieces of merchandise, and I think you might enjoy them. Now, the real real question here is whether they're going to release a box set like they did for The Last Night on Earth and Suicide Squad and the Joker bot wave. If they do, you might want to wait because the box set is usually a better deal. But if we're not going to see the box set for this wave, then I would definitely want to check it out sooner rather than later. Am I going to get any of these, soulmates? Well, as always, it depends on how much interest you guys have in seeing these reviewed. And if you'd like to see that, go ahead and share this video with your friends, guys, and we'll see what happens. Now that we've seen this entire wave, soulmates, what Arkham City characters do we want to see next? Well, personally, I would really love to see Mr. Freeze because that was such a good boss fight from the Arkham City video game. But I would not be mad to see Poison Ivy either. I think that she's long overdue for representation as an action figure in the DC Multiverse line. Well, soulmates, what do you think about this Arkham City Collect and Connect wave? Is this one that you had to have for your collection? Are you on the fence about this one? Or are you not that into the characters that we see here? Also, guys, let me know what Arkham City characters you would like to see next from DC Multiverse. If you want to learn more about the DC Multiverse Collect and Connect Atrocitus wave, you can check out that video here, soulmates.